Yes, welcome, welcome, welcome. What is this over here on this side? Excuse me. I know. There we go. There we go. That's much better, right? Welcome. I am Tracy Bryant, Tracy the Sacred CEO, and we are here at Life After Divorce, my divorce story, episode 10, and I want to speak about surviving marriage burnout. This show is dedicated to having the discussions concerning marriage, relationships, and divorce. We are committed to bringing awareness and shed some light on strategies that assist in restoring faith, purpose, love, and happiness after divorce. So it's just not all about life after divorce. It's about how do we maintain healthy love relationships? How do we maintain healthy marriages? What are some things that we need to go in and we need to start shifting and rearranging and implementing and releasing in order to make this marriage thing work so that we don't have to get to the point of divorce. However, if divorce is the last option, such as it was for myself, and if it is coming in between your happiness and your right to grow, then you can and should experience happiness, love, and life after divorce. So, this segment, once again, is my divorce story and surviving marriage burnout. Do you feel like you just give entirely too much in your marriage? I know I do. I did. I felt as though it was extremely lopsided, right? I have been caring for people for well over 50 years, and I've reached a point in my development, and it came during my marriage where I just couldn't continue. I couldn't continue to share, to give, to divide, to sacrifice. I actually had nothing left to give in my marriage. I had done all of the things to, I was providing over the call of duty. I was stepping in and doing things that my ex should have been handling. It was a lot of things that he should have handled, but because I felt as though I did not want to experience lack and doing without, I went ahead and took care of it because I felt like, why should I have to do without just because I'm with him and he's not leveling up or he can't do it? That was such a big mistake because what happened was he became dependent, literally codependent. There was an unhealthy dependence on his part. So I left my marriage not only because of irreconcilable differences, but I was exasperated and I was exhausted, right? So tell me if you're tired. If you're tired, put that in the chat. Are you tired of going along to get along and feeling like you're getting no type of reciprocity, no reciprocation, no fair exchange. They're not maybe your mate is not delivering on their promise. That's how I felt. I felt like I had literally been lied to. Okay. I wanted to be a good wife. I wanted to be a supportive and nurturing and encouraging wife. But it was very hard for me to do when you're doing too much, when you're thinking about more than what your role is and what your duties are, it can become so overwhelming. And during the time when I did ask for help, um, I wasn't thrown a life preserver. My husband didn't have it. And I had to come to some hard realizations, especially when it was time for me to go, that he just didn't have it. He didn't have it. I don't know if he didn't want to have it. I don't know if he just got used to not having it. But I still just don't understand how a man can come into a relationship with a woman and not at least create something. in order to complete their role, in order to live up to their role as the husband, as the provider, as the provisionary, as the protector, right? So, um, with me becoming extremely frustrated, like I said, I was exasperated and exhausted. I recognized that I had been in my marriage and living from a space of independence, hyper independence, due to me feeling as though I needed to survive. So I went into survival mode. And in my survival mode, in most women, most Black women in particular, our survival mode, we are hyper independent. We don't want to ask nobody for nothing. We don't want to, we don't want to impose on anyone. We want to be able to do things on our own and create the provisions and provide and make sure that things get done, right? And that is such an unhealthy relationship and attachment style, especially in a marriage. So even though I was in the marriage, I was operating as a married woman who was single. And I know many of you are like, what is that? What is that married woman and single? Well, I'm going to explain it to you. It's being married to your spouse, to a man, to a woman, whatever, but to your spouse. And you have taken on basically full responsibility of everything for everything, the provision, all of that. And it what it does for a man, it makes them feel emasculated. So that's when you get the feedback or the anger from your, husband, your man saying, I'm not a child, or you not my mama, or and you get this really negative feedback of him feeling like you are reducing him to a little boy status. But really and truly, there's no other place for him to feel that he can't feel like a man if a woman is doing everything. There's no way he's ever going to feel fully like a man, even if they allowed themselves to be in that position. And even if the woman has somehow agreed to continue in that position with her husband, right? So, let's talk about codependency and what that is. Well, codependency is a very unhealthy attachment style. It's a form of dependency, and it is actually, excuse me, my nose just is itching right here on this camera. So excuse me. There are, let me see, there it's a problem in itself. It's a big problem because what it means is that one or two people are depending on one another to an excess that is strenuous, that is unhealthy emotionally and psychologically. And it means that codependence also means that the person or the persons are actually looking to one another to fulfill in a role that applies just too much pressure on the relationship. There are healthy forms of dependency, and that's otherwise known as interdependence. And that actually, interdependence actually makes relationships stronger. So I want to talk a little bit about what is healthy interdependence. It is a necessary component for developing all healthy, positive, emotional intimacy, romantic relationships. It is a dynamic factor of togetherness. I mean, it's like a couple doesn't feel like they're risking not being together when they have enter healthy interdependence. It's like you can live separate lives. You can still be, enjoy the things that you love and still know that you have a bond and an intimacy in that relationship. There's not high forms of jealousy because one is going to do something without the other, or because one may have a friendship with another, or things like that. Yet not it's not an over dependence on each other where it can push one another away or cause um levels of toxicity in the relationship that are just unhealthy, emotionally and psychologically unhealthy, right? So I know for me, because as a child I wasn't supported. When I grew up, I wasn't, validated, and there was abuse and neglect in the home. What happens is, in relationships, what I've done through some self-examination and in rediscovering myself in this new era of being, single now, I've learned that what I've done is I've become the caregiver in order to maintain my relationships. I've even done that in friendships, right? I've become the caregiver. So if a person's childhood is filled with support and like solid boundaries and consistency and love, then these interdependence can help provide the foundation for building secure attachments. However, like on the flip side, like I was saying, I grew up in with, invalidation and abuse and neglect. So most of the times I would become the caregiver in all of my relationships. So successful relationships are built on solid foundations. Let's talk about that for a minute. Solid foundations of interdependence, being able to still have likes and dislikes without the other one being, overly involved, and in that solid foundation, it creates a safety of security, trust, reliability, reassurance, and nurturing. Those were not meant for me as a child, right? And it wasn't meant for me in my marriage. So, what I've recognized is that I've just repeated those things that are familiar to me from my childhood. And this has been a piece to my puzzle of my development, right? Now, interdependence also means sharing your feelings and your needs with your partner without feeling like the relationship is going to end, without fear. You can share freely, okay, without um having a confrontation. You can share what's going on in your world, in your heart, in your emotional landscape, for and not fear that there's going to be confrontation or that the relationship will end. And healthy interdependence also is very necessary for developing emotional intimacy in romantic relationships, which what heightens sexual intimacy. Do you know when a woman feels safe, secure, she has trust, she can rely on her partner and is nurtured? Do you know that creates a level of vulnerability where that submission automatically begins to happen? And I'm not saying submission in the under the will of dominance. I'm saying a submission that you personally authorize because of how safe you feel, right? You feel safe, you feel nurtured, you feel like this is a trusting space where you can be vulnerable, and being able to rely on your husband, your mate, your man, your lover. Being able to know that when they say they are going to do something, they show up in that space. They not only show up for you, but they show up for themselves in being trustworthy. That right there will keep your wife's panties wet. At all times. Okay. So, healthy interdependence is necessary for developing emotional intimacy in romantic relationships, and also it heightens sexual relations. Okay. I felt like I couldn't depend on my ex, and I tried over and over and over again. I would test the waters to see if I could depend. I would, if it, he, and it just wasn't happening. And I think a lot of it had to do with his childhood trauma. We both came into the relationship. I did have a lot more, maybe therapy and counseling, and a lot more healing than he had experienced. However, I recognized that I still came in to that marriage trauma bonding, which means I had a lot of unhealed areas that needed attending to. And that was, I truly believe that was our reason for us being together. It wasn't all bad. I've said that before. It was very, very good. There were stages of a lot of marital bliss, but I still realized that there was always based on the exchange, based on what I was giving and providing and doing. So going back to what the child being the caretaker and taking that into my relationships. So me not being able to feel like I could rely or depend on my ex definitely put me in survival mode. It caused high levels of anxiety, and it caused me to be hyper independent. Hyper independence. I developed trust issues, which I came in the relationship desiring to trust him. I desired to trust him, and I just was getting becoming disappointed as the relationship went on. I was disappointed in so many areas, and he was too, because as much as he may have loved me, and I do know that he did desire for our marriage to work, but we both have to put in the work for the marriage to work. Just to say we're married is not enough, right? And many of you, I know you're in marriages right now that are unfulfilled, that where you can't rely on your spouse, you can't trust them for many different reasons. It doesn't always have to be infidelity, you know. It can be, some things, just him not being able to keep his word, and you knowing that you need certain things to be done in the home, and knowing that he's not even attempting to meet those needs can cause high anxiety and depression, and put any woman in survival mode and to become hyper independent. Now, when I mean hyper independent, that means you stop asking your husband, your mate, your lover to even do anything for you. You just start taking care of everything all on your own. And that's where I was at. And I got so many complaints like, you don't even include me in this. You don't share this. I didn't feel like I could. And sharing it and including him only meant for me that it was going to be more weight on me, because I was going to be taking care of whatever that provision was for him to even be there, because he wasn't showing up in that way for me. And I know, and with my love that I still have for him, I know that it has to do with some trauma that was not dealt with. I know this. I know this now that I sit back and I really analyze. So many of our men need healing. They need to go back to those childhood issues. Many men who are married are still that 8-year old boy. And I'm not saying that as a way to shoot a shot. I'm saying this from what I have researched and discovered. Many of our husbands and men are still stuck in being that 8-year-old boy who was traumatized, unfulfilled, verbally abused, mentally abused, physically abused, sexually abused. He's still stuck there. And he's going into these relationships and these marriages, and he's having children. He's going in being a family man with all of these unresolved trauma and childhood issues, and it is leaking all over that marriage. It is leaking all over the children, all over the family. And I'm not saying he's the only one that has them, but the difference in this is, for I know for me, with me being a woman, I can only speak from my space as a female. I know that we definitely we talk it out. We talk things out. We're very verbal. We're constantly sharing and talking and getting in, sister circles and in groups and things of that nature, where we start uncovering, different um, side effects and things that are happening in relationships when it comes to us and the children. We're talking about those. We're finding ways to air out that emotional baggage and to discharge some of the hurt and the pain that's attached to it. Men many times don't have those. I was talking to one of our therapist friends that I plan on having on the show really, really soon. And he was saying that men, usually their therapy is in the barbershop. And I was like, wow, talk to me. He said that their therapy is usually in the barbershop. And that's where they talk about family, they talk about, childhood pieces and things like that. But see, things and I thought that that was very remarkable, because I do know that in the barbershops, especially for men, from what I do know, and I'm not a man, so I haven't sat in a barbershop with nothing full of men. Well, no, that's a lie. I have sat in a barbershop full of men, because I used to get my hair all the way cut off and I used to go in. And they would talk a lot. They did. However, I knew that some things were curtailed and not shared, because there was a female present too. But he did say that those were their moments where a lot of times they get their therapy was in the barbershop. And sometimes you have to ask yourself, well, is that safe? Is that safe that just a bunch of men are talking from a state of all of them feeling neglected? Well, I would say yes. Or all of them being hurt or traumatized? I say yes. Any way and means of getting that out and sharing that and being able to be vulnerable and expressive is always a healthy measure, right? Um, so I say this with regards to my hyper independence caused me, my survival, going into survival mode in my hyper independence caused me extreme burnout. Extreme burnout, because this is something that I've repeated. It's been a repeat performance of mine for many, many, many years, because I had not identified with my trauma associated to my survival and my survival mode, and those triggers that make me feel like I'm not being cared for in a way where I can be vulnerable and trust and rely and even depend, right, on my mate. So being in survival mode, a lot of times it's a catchy phrase, right? But it's a psychological and Emotional state where you're in survival mode, that means that your nervous system, honey, is activated in flight or fight mode response. And just think, I was on flight and fight in flight, flight or fight or response mode. I was in that mode for over 50 years. Over 50 years. And here I go marrying a man, beautiful man who I love dearly, who had his own childhood trauma and issues and stuff going on. But he loved me. And we got together because we felt like love was all we needed and love is enough. Right? And I'm here to tell you it's not. Love is work. Yes, love is work. Marriage is work. So being in this fight or flight response for all those years, and I'm always releasing this stress hormones, especially cortisol. When you are constantly in fight or flight mode, your cortisol levels are high. Cortisol is that hormone that goes straight to your gut. So I always had issues, weight issues. I've always been experienced challenges with my weight, fluctuating up, down, mostly up, and now it's making sense. It's making sense for me why I continue to be challenged with my weight, particularly in my belly area, because I'm always in survival mode. I have to say, after leaving my marriage, because my marriage is the catalyst to me uncovering and having these self realizations concerning who I am and my contribution to this relationship that I gave 110% to. Right? So I'm really visiting all of me. And who am I in this? And being in survival mode for all those years and having these high levels of anxiety in my nervous system constantly being out of whack. My parasympathetic nervous system toe up, right? And I'm constantly releasing stress hormones of cortisol. And when you are in high levels of anxiety and survival mode, you don't make good and accurate decisions. You make decisions many times out of desperation, opportunity, and very moment based decisions. And I can see where I have done that. All of this, the dependency, the codependency, the survival mode, not being able to trust, not being able to rely, not being able to depend, all of that led to my exhaustion and me becoming disoriented in my burnout. So understand, ladies, those of you who are hyper independent, especially in relationship, you must take care of yourself. You need more self care than ever. And that's one of the things that I was neglecting. I was doing minimal self care because the more I continued to be independent and take care of things around the house, around the business, around, the marriage, around the more I did, the more hyper independent I became, and the more disoriented I become, and the more I lost myself. And that's when I basically, I don't want to say flatline, but you might as well say I flatlined. Like I was done. I was done. I was done. Right. So now that I'm in this process now of rediscovering myself and picking up my pieces on this journey of self discovery and self realization, all with new moments of pain and joy, all mixed in, that just is really bringing a whole new unique aroma and flavor to my life. I am so eternally grateful for my marriage and my leaving my marriage, my divorce. I am so grateful to that process. I would have never been on this journey of self discovery, of finding myself, finding myself. Who am I? Between all of the pain and disappointment, who am I? I have a right to be happy. And you do too. You have a right to be happy. But I will share this with you, dear one. Slow down. And my ex would tell me that all the time. He would say, slow down. And I'm not slowing down. You better keep up. Yeah. That was my response. And that was my attitude. And he was right. Slow down. I needed to slow down, but not for the reasons he wanted me to slow down. Many times he wanted me to slow down is because it was, yeah, he probably seen me burning out, but at the same time, it was more so because he couldn't keep up. He couldn't keep up, you know. So if you want me to slow down, and I have, we've uh, accrued a certain amount of income coming in because we're entrepreneurs. And if you want me to slow down, that means I'm going to have to let go of what maybe bring in 15,000 or 16,000 a month in the household. So if I let that go in order for me to slow down, how are you going to compensate that? And there was never a plan of compensation. So I felt like I couldn't slow down because our lifestyle was connected to it, as well as I had employees that their livelihood was connected to me in the business. So even though he was telling me to slow down, which rightfully so, I should have, I felt like I couldn't because we were depending on the finances from my activity. So I'm going to tell you, dear sister, I'm going to tell you, you need to ask yourself, is your marriage worth you burning out? Are you in survival mode? Are you hyper independent? Are you with a man that you can't rely on, can't depend on, which where now you lack trust and support? Do you need a life raft? Are you drowning? Are you drowning? Are you losing yourself? Are you always at a level of high anxiety? Are you disoriented? If you are, you seek help, especially if you can't speak to your mate, lover, husband about it. I would speak about it. I was very verbal about me burning out. I was very verbal about me becoming exhausted. And all I heard was slow down, slow down. But you gave me, I would sit down and talk to you about slowing down, and you came with no compensation plan. Once again, I'm still feel like I was stuck on a hamster wheel, right? How many of you feel like that in a marriage? You may need to think about making some changes. I was willing to sacrifice it all. I was willing to let it all go and walk away. And that's what I did. And many people are like, well, how did you do it? There's so many women that would have stayed. I know that there's so many women that they are staying because of the investments, the home. Some are staying because they have small children. And my heart goes out to all of you, every last one of you who's staying for whatever reason you feel you need to stay, especially my sisters with small children. Because it's hard for you to even think of a plan and an exit strategy and you have small children depending on you, and maybe the little support that you are getting from the father or the of the children or your husband is just it's barely, it's minimum, but even accepting minimum you feel is better than nothing, right? I get it. I get it. Right. So I just want to come to share that with you about how um, we need to learn how to survive marriage burnout. Many times, most of the time, it's not just the marriage that's burning us out. It's the marriage is the catalyst of letting you know, Black woman, you've done too much, you've given too long, you shared, you've divided, you've sacrificed, and it's time to stop now. You need rest. I know me. And this, they talk about a soft life, honey. This it's not even. I wouldn't even consider it a soft life as much as I would consider it a nurturing life. I'm nurturing myself now. I'm nourishing myself. I'm giving myself all those things that my ex couldn't give me. Right? And I know many of you are saying, yeah, but you're sleeping alone. I'd rather sleep alone than have to get up each day and be a workhorse or feel like a wife who's a slave. I'd rather sleep alone comfortably, comfortably, right? So I just wanted to share that with you. If you were tired, my sister, go ahead and join lifeafterdivorceshow.com. Join our email list at lifeafterdivorceshow.com and be part of our community. We actually have a new membership community coming up very, very soon. It is the Rebirth Collective Thrive Tribe on Patreon. I will be launching that, and you will be able to receive constant support each day. Also, daily videos and affirmations and meditations. You'll be able to get my ebook coming out very soon. It is Faith, Courage with a whole lot of crazy. Faith, courage, and a whole lot of crazy. That is the name of the new book. We have it in ebook, but we also have it in hard copy as well. So I have a lot of things launching to help support women who are looking to find their happiness, who may be either questioning divorce, looking forward to moving on divorce, or just doing your best to experience a happy and healthy, wholesome life after divorce. So, thank you so much. I love you. Peace and blessings. And you continue to be encouraged. And remember, don't burn yourself out trying your best to keep up. Don't burn yourself out trying your best to keep up. And rest and restoration are all part of a healthy self love life. I love you. Take care.